Kia ora te whānau ihu karaiti ko, Andrew Doubleday aho. Today we're looking at the text for Sunday the 12th of July 2026. It's Matthew chapter 13 verses 1 through to 9 and verses 18 through to 23. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depths of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seed fell on good soil, and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen." And then we jump to verse 18. "Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what is sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. This is year A of the lectionary cycle. It's the year of Matthew. Pardon me. And while all the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, have this parable, only in the Matthew year do we consider it. Now, just to remind us that John has none of the parables, so we don't see them there. You'll have noticed that we jumped over a number of verses between the giving of the parable and its exposition, Jesus' explanation of what it meant. And what I want to suggest today is that the bit in between is important. And so I'm going to consider it today, the bit that we don't read. Now, Mark and Luke both contain abbreviated versions of this in-between bit, but Matthew has a full exposition, and it's an explanation of why Jesus actually spoke in parables. So I want to start with this, and then move on to the parable itself. Then the disciples came and asked him. This is Matthew 13, from verse 10 through to verse 17. The disciples asked him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" He answered, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to those who have, much more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. The reason I speak to them in parables is that seeing they do not perceive, and hearing they do not listen, nor do they understand. With them indeed is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah that says, 'You will indeed listen, but never understand, and you will look, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and their ears are hard of hearing, and they have shut their eyes, that they might not look with their eyes, and listen with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. I suspect that most of us most readily hear this explanation as a judgment by Jesus. That Jesus uses parables because he doesn't want the people to understand. That he's keeping the kingdom shrouded in mystery. That he's intentionally keeping them in the dark. I want to suggest to you that the opposite is true. Now, I'm not going to go through it verse by verse and pick up all the details of it, but I think that the essence is there. And I think the opposite is true, is that Jesus wants people to understand. He wants them to get it. He wants them to see. And it goes directly to why Jesus is using parables. I want to invite you to think back for a moment to the most memorable sermons that you have heard. We've all heard those absolutely brilliant, insightful explanations of a concept or a text. And if you're like me, all I remember 24 hours later was how brilliant it was, without remembering what it was. It may be that I'm peculiar in this, that I'm one of those, quoting Isaiah, whose heart has grown dull, and my ears are hard of hearing, and that I've shut my eyes, so that I might not look with my eyes and listen with my ears, or understand with my heart. It could be that the parables are for me and just for people like me, because I know that when insight is attached to a story, I'll almost certainly remember it and more hopefully understand it. There are illustrative stories that I've heard that have profoundly moved me. And while I've remembered the story so clearly, it sometimes has taken me months to more fully understand why it has moved me so deeply. Sometimes waking, and this has happened once or twice, waking in the middle of the night with a flash of insight. Aha, I see. Aha, I understand. And I make the connection between the story and the particular concept that is so central. But why is this? How does this work? And it's because I believe that it works because we all live in stories. Your life is a story. My life is a story. They are ongoing narratives with chapters, with paragraphs, and with sentences. And when we hear someone else's story, we make connections to our own. How often have we burst out before someone has finished telling their story, recognizing the connections and wanting to tell our own? Here's the thing. And what's really important and useful, I think, about this is that we cannot block a story and its interpretation. We may block and dismiss propositional statements that others make, like, you're a hypocrite, or you're a liar, or you're becoming, or you're being manipulative. But we cannot block a story which interprets itself to us and tells us exactly what we are, even though we might not want to admit it out loud. So that's the thing. Stories interpret themselves. Parables interpret themselves. They tell us who we are in the narrative. We know where we fit into the story. And it's one of the ways that Jesus got through to the religious leaders. And one of the things that we see from time to time is that says that they realized that the parable, they realized that the story was about them. It hit home in a way that no other way of speaking to them was going to gather any traction. They could not block the story interpreting itself to them. I want to suggest that it's because of this that Jesus uses parables. He knew that there was the possibility that done this way, the deaf, the blind, the slow of heart might eventually hear, might eventually see, might eventually understand. After all, even the disciples, who apparently got it, needed parables to be unpacked. And this was one of them. Jesus' use of parables is an act then of grace, of compassion, of love. And each parable tends to have multiple layers, interpreting itself differently to us depending on our need and age and stage in life. So then let's briefly look at this parable, the parable of the sower. I'm not going to go into great detail, just have a quick look at it. The first thing I want to notice is that we tend to take the parable personally, don't we? As a description of our own hearts. Are we the rocky pathway? Are we the shallow soil? Are we the soil replete with thorns and weeds? Or are we the good soil? And it's easy to take it that way and find ourselves plagued with guilt and an awareness of our own smallness and inadequacies and failings, recognizing that we don't measure up and that we may need to work harder to be good soil. So let's look briefly at these conditions, as we call them. The rocky ground or pathway. The seed, where the seed is snatched up by the birds. This is ground, I want to suggest, where there has been no preparation. The gospel, when dropped onto this ground, makes absolutely no sense. It's a story from another planet. There has been no preparation put in of heart or mind on the part of the sower, because in the end it's the sower who's distributing the seed. And who's responsible for that? The rocky ground? I don't think so. It may be part of our story, and we're just not able to hear it. It may be irrelevant. It may make no sense to us at this time. And then there's a shallow soil. Someone who receives the gospel, who receives the seed with great enthusiasm. It answers their questions. It salves the guilty conscience. It holds the promise of prosperity, of a successful life. Then what happens when the wheels come off? When things don't work out? When disappointment sets in? And we think, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for ongoing happiness, success and prosperity. And I've seen this happen. And people just walk away. This is not what they thought they were getting. This is not the deal. And then there's the soil laden with thorns. Except they don't seem like thorns at the time. They seem like necessities. They seem like responsibilities. They seem like obligations that need to be fulfilled. Sure, they distract us from the main thing, but they're important, aren't they? And we see that often as a stage of life for young people as they're coming into courting and marriage and children and mortgages and running the kids to their sporting and cultural events, and everything gets crowded out. And then there's the good soil. Someone else that we notice who's clearly got a good handle on it and got it sussed. They got their act together. They're a rare individual that we wish we could be, or we could be like. So what are we to take from this? Well, the first thing I want to suggest is that we're not actually responsible for the condition of the soil. It's where the seed happens to land at a particular time. As I kind of hinted, if anyone's responsible, surely it's the sower. The second thing I want to suggest is that this is as much about timing as anything else. Our lives, all of our lives, have their seasons. There are times when we're like the rocky pathway. We're not open to the gospel. We're not open to God. We're not open to Jesus. We're not open to promptings of the Holy Spirit for any number of reasons. There are times when we're like the shallow soil. We want the easy answer. We're entitled, we believe, to success. We're gutted when it doesn't work out, and we blame God because the lack of fulfillment is surely God's part of the bargain, certainly as we perceived it. And there are times when the soil of our lives is chocked with thorns. Life just got too busy, and we struggled to make time for what really mattered. Most of us are all these soil types at different times and stages in life. I think it's kind of useful to recognize that. And if we recognize that, it means that we have the potential to walk gently and compassionately towards others, recognizing that they too are in different seasons. Hopefully walking with less judgment and more openness and generosity of spirit as we see others struggling with where they might currently find themselves. Let's also acknowledge that we also have times of being good soil. Now, we might not readily recognize it, but there are times when grace actually does flow through us. Times when God actually does a work in us that makes a difference in the lives of those around us. And we might think those times are far and few between. But isn't it great to know that they're there? Amen. God bless you.